Hello, welcome back to my origin story. My name is Nora, and I've been slowly telling the story of my life. We left off back in 1997 ish, and I had been kicked out of school for having some marijuana in my backpack, and I had just sent my girlfriend away to Arizona. So I wanted to talk about one thing, which is that people might be wondering like why we were in the closet or whatnot, because I know a lot now kids are coming out a lot younger, and there's a couple things about that. One is I had actually asked my mom at some point. I don't remember when it was. I remember where we were driving though, and I said, "Mom, how does someone know if they're gay?" And she said, "Well, when you're a teenager, you're kind of horny for everyone, so you can't really figure out your sexual orientation until you're 18." And so I was like, "Oh, okay. I can't come out until I'm 18." And so for me, that was sort of settled. Like that was that. And I knew, well, the way I encoded that in my memory was, or in my mind was that if I came out before I was 18, she wouldn't believe me. She would just brush it off. So I was like, all right, whatever happens, I'm not going to come out until I'm 18. So I was in independent studies, which required going to school or the independent studies place once a week to pick up assignments and drop off assignments, which were like joke assignments, as I mentioned. And just kind of hanging around, being a little shit kicker with other kids that weren't in school. And the only punishment that I got, and I don't actually remember if this was from like the police station or from the school. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I got opportunity transfer out of the school, which means I wasn't expelled. I was allowed to transfer. And then I was mandated to do therapy. I wasn't like charged with anything at the police station. They booked me in, but I didn't have any charges. Um, so I had to go to therapy like once a week as part of I don't know, some kind of conditions of something. And that really, I didn't take that very seriously. I took that as a pretty big joke. Um, I just was very resistant to that, and my therapist was kind of whatever, and I was being a punk kid. So I think I was supposed to go a certain number of sessions, and I went like two or three times, and nobody followed up on it, so I stopped going, and there were no consequences, so that was that. um, so my parents need to figure out, my mom really wanted me to get back into a regular high school. I couldn't go back to San Pedro High, and as I mentioned, schools are based on geography, so she was trying to figure out where I could go to school. And her boyfriend at the time, Rich, they had been dating for long enough that they started to get serious, and he moved in with us. We used into our condo in San Pedro, and they were talking about buying a house. He is a systems engineer for the James Webb Space Telescope. That was basically his entire life's work. We didn't really understand what he did in high school. I just was like, oh, my mom's boyfriend is a rocket scientist, like literally a rocket scientist, which is still cool, but we didn't really get his work other than that he had top level security clearance. So anyway, so they were looking for a home to buy, and a big part of what they were considering was what geographic location can we move to so that Nora can get back in school. My brother had graduated high school already. He was going to USC for to get a history degree, and my mom, sorry, my what was I gonna say? I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So my mom and Rich were looking for where to move, and they were looking at Redondo Beach, so I could go to. There's two schools in Redondo Union High, and I can't even remember the other one right now. So they were looking at houses, and I was still in independent studies, and I decided I wanted a job so that I could have some money and start saving money. I really wanted to get my driver's license and have a car and all of those sorts of things. And so I got a job at this bagel store called Bagels Galore, and there are two of them in San Pedro. One that's about a block and a half from my dad's house, and one about 2 blocks from where my mom lived. So that was great. So they hired me Since I wasn't 16 yet, I was only 15. Apparently, I don't know if this still exists, but there's some kind of like loophole that if you're not 16, you don't have to get paid minimum wage. And minimum wage at the time was $5.25 an hour. They hired me for $4.90 an hour. And I wish I could remember the name of the guy that was my boss because he was a total, he was really a total perv, honestly. He made inappropriate comments about young girls all the time. He may have like patted my butt once or twice. I'm not sure. I feel like I kind of have that memory. What I do remember very clearly was across the street, someone had moved in for me, and she was younger than me. She was 12, but she like kind of had like early puberty, so she was already physically developed. And she came into the store once, and my boss made some kind of inappropriate comment about her. And I was like, bro, she's 12. And he was like, oh, what? Oh my God, I can't believe I was like, looking at a 12-year-old. And I'm like, well, would it have been okay if she was 15? Like, what the fuck, man? And he was married and he had two young kids, and he was just a sad, sad little man. Luckily, I only worked for like 4 hours Saturday mornings. I'd be there from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So I didn't have to deal with him much, but he really was just a really horrible person as far as being a boss, and the way he spoke about women and the way that he treated me and even the way he treated employees. Customers. The way he treated customers. Like, this was not a customer was always right scenario. This was like if a customer was rude, they would kick them out. And I think the reason they stayed in business for as long as they did is because their bagels were really, really good. They were super delicious. And there is nothing more delicious than like a fresh, hot, fresh out of the oven bagel. Oh my God, so good. You don't have to toast it. You just put some spread on it. Oh, so good. And then the extra bonus was at the end of the day, I got to take home as many bagels as I want. So whatever they didn't sell by the end of the day, they would have someone come up, pick up to like donate to a homeless shelter or something like that. But I could take them home. And that gave me like massive street cred because I could show up to school or with my friends or whatever with like as many delicious bagels as I wanted. And so that's the fun thing about in high school. You start getting jobs places, and then you guys can start trading things. That was a lot of fun. So I worked there and I was saving money. And the other thing that happened, and I had forgot to mention before, was I had convinced my parents, since they were divorced, to get me a pager with a voicemail. I told them the reason I needed a pager with a voicemail was because my horseback riding teacher could never find me, never knew where I was, because might be at my mom's, I might be at my dad's. And so they agreed. And so I had one of those, like for any of you that were, around in the 90s, it was like that translucent bright green pager that would clip onto my belt. It was freaking great. And we invented pager codes, which was like ways that you could spell words out, so you could send people messages on their pager. And, like 143, I love you, 823, thinking of you. And then also just each using different numbers to make letters, to make words. And so what happened after I was arrested, the school was trying to make an example out of me, but what actually happened was I instantly got a massive bump in street cred. People who I did not know, who did not know me, would be stopping me in the street and like, oh, aren't you the one that got arrested? Hey, didn't you get arrested? And so my pager code became 50, like 50 for the cops. So that was that was assigned to me, and it was pretty funny. And I think it's pretty interesting just that, like, the school's like, we'll scare people straight. And what actually happened was I just got a lot of like street cred. So my mom and Rich were looking for houses, and I was working and messing around and doing whatever. And they did end up buying a house in North Redondo. And we moved there. And so that I was going to be able to start 10th grade at Redondo Union High School. And so that was, I don't actually remember how I felt about it at the time. It's not fun starting, like I'd already just been trying to get my footing. at San Pedro High, and then I got kicked out, and then I'm trying to figure out my footing in independent studies, and that wasn't great. And so now I'm going to be transferring to a new school. So that was coming up, and sorry, this episode's a little bit fluffy because I'm just trying to get to the next part of the narrative, and it's been a long week. But the other thing I remember about my mom's house in San Pedro before we moved, and I hope she never watches this, but my sister had gotten engaged. She was working as a graphic designer, and she's a very talented artist, and she'd gotten engaged to this guy who they met at work, but he ended up working for Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy. So they had an engagement party at my mom's house, and they bought a keg as part of it, and all this booze and stuff. And so after the engagement party, they cleaned up, but the keg was just sitting in my backyard. I guess because someone would have to come pick it up. I don't really remember the logistics. All I know is that there was a lot of free beer in my backyard. And so I had friends over after school. My mom worked and she wasn't there. So we all would come over and drink the beer out of the keg. And that was, another like moment of me feeling like, and I it's teenage logic, but like, oh, I'm so cool. I have this like resource to offer people, whatever. So yeah, so we did that. And the other thing that had happened was I told you last episode that I was banned from going to Sacred Grounds Coffee House. And of course, I still went anyways. I just, went like while my parents were at work, etc. And once I was there hanging out outside with my friends, with, Brenda and whoever else. And I see coming around the corner a white Toyota pickup truck with a white shell. And I'm like, oh no, that looks like my dad's car. And lo and behold, it was my father. And he basically slammed on the brakes and was like, get in the car. And I don't know, he probably went that specific route because he is suspicious that I was going to be out. And that's why he did that. But yeah, so I was majorly busted. And although I don't remember any specific consequences, really, I don't remember being grounded other than the restrictions they gave me. My parents weren't they weren't the kind of parents that they gave us a lot of autonomy. They really let us do a lot, and live our own lives. And I think that I was a pretty sensitive kid, so they knew that I felt bad. But so anyways, so out of San Pedro and into Redondo, and I was, surprise, surprise, sort of excited to get a new fresh start. And now that Ray was out of my life, I was like, hey, maybe this is another opportunity to try to be straight. So, I was like, a new school, new people, they don't know me, fresh start, that's great. And also moving out of San Pedro, which was, a lot of you probably don't know this, but San Pedro is actually, the port of Los Angeles is one of the largest crystal methamphetamine imports in the nation. In fact, we used to jokingly call San Pedro San Speedro when I was in high school. There was definitely a lot of crystal meth around. I personally never partook, but it was somewhat, ubiquitous. And the first thing I noticed when I transferred to Redondo Union High School was, well, first of all, the amount of money at that school compared to the amount of money that was put into Pedro High was like night and day. So this was like clearly the rich kids' school. I had been going, I guess, to the not rich kids' school. They had refrigerated water fountains. That was unbelievable. Their theater had like an orchestra pit underneath. It was a huge campus. It's one of the biggest campuses for high school, I think, in all of California. And this is how you're, in a higher income bracket. Instead of methamphetamine, people were using cocaine. So that was the big shift. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm moving on up here. So, yeah. So that's So that's where I'm going to stop for today. I know this was like a little bit of a disjointed story. Like I said, I'm not feeling great. So I just want to get to me starting at Redondo Union High, and I will tell you about whether or not I was successful in my attempts to be heterosexual once again. I think you can probably guess, but like if you got to keep trying to be normal, right? That was sort of, I just, wanted to have as low friction life as possible. And being queer in the 90s was not great. 1997 is when I started my sophomore year, and that's also, I'm pretty sure 1997 is the year that Ellen DeGeneres came out. And for anybody who was around during that time, that was not great for her. It was a big deal for like queer people, but she got canceled for coming out. Her show got canceled. She got canceled. It pretty much ruined her career temporarily. She was able to make a comeback, as most of you know, but just the optics for being queer were not great at that time. So it wasn't something like, it wasn't cool. It wasn't something that one aspired to. Um, Okay, so I will be back next time and we will talk about what happens when I transfer to the rich kids school and go from there. All right, today's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate it. I think it's one of my least favorite holidays. I think it's dumb, but because it's like excludes people who aren't in relationships, and that's a shitty holiday. So anyways, I hope you have a good day and I'll be back soon.